In this module, I'll be talking about the reading part of the TOEFL. So let's get started. Firstly, I'll talk about the introduction to the reading part. Then I'll talk about the types of questions in detail, and I'll explain how to approach each type of question. Then I'll talk about some practical tips and the double S method and the zigzag method. Finally, I will talk about the types of questions in practice, where you will do a reading and do question by question so you understand how to do it in practice. Introduction to the reading part. Well, the first thing you have to know, which is very important, is that you will have two passages, and each one of the passages are gonna have 10 questions. Okay, guys, why am I highlighting this? Because if you're using an outdated material, it is different. The TOEFL has changed over the time. So you will find lots of different materials online or in older books. So pay attention to that. Only 2 passages and 10 questions per passage. How much time you have per passage? You have 17 minutes per passage, 35 minutes in total. Okay, and time is of the essence, so it's very important for you to know that this is the amount of time you have. All right, so it's 17 minutes to read the passage and answer to the questions. Now let's talk a little bit about what are in those passages, okay? What composes those passages here? So the passages, they come from textbook materials from university, okay? Remember, the TOEFL is an academic test, so they will be testing your ability to read academic texts, all right? It covers a variety of subjects, and they are designed to reflect, as I just said, academic material. Okay, you don't need to have prior knowledge of the topics. That's crucial. There is not one person on the planet that knows everything about biology, about science, about history, psychology, and so on. So relax. Everybody can read and answer the questions just based on the texts. Now let's talk a little bit about the most common topics you will find in the reading part of the TOEFL. So here I just wrote some of the most common ones. So we have here social science, arts, history, physical sciences such as physics, astronomy, and chemistry, and life science such as biology, microbiology, botanic, zoology, and so on. So here I just wanted to highlight that you can see things from science and humanities. Usually, since you have 2 passages, as I mentioned, one text is going to be more related to humanities, so social science, history, arts, and the second one is going to be related to something related to science, such as astronomy, biology, and so on. Okay, great. Let's talk about what you will encounter in the passages, the characteristic of the TOEFL passages here. So they are theoretically complex. So as I said, it's academic material. So it's something that a person who is in the first year of college would read if they are, for example, taking a course in history. You would read a text about wars. So this is a possibility. Another possibility is a text related to butterflies, the development of butterflies. So it contains things required in this kind of course. Okay, you will have to deduce some answers reading in between the lines because of the complexity of the texts, okay? They are logical and objective. So first thing, they are about a theory. So you are not going to find a novel, for example. You're not going to find an article, for example. It's something theoretical. Second thing is something logical and objective, okay? So it's based on facts, in an impersonal tone. So there are no feelings here. It's very, very academic. And the language is super formal. So no slangs, okay, it's usually a specialized vocabulary. And this is something that some students are afraid of, you know, because of this specialized vocabulary here. But as I mentioned, don't you worry, with practice, you will get used to the jargons of each field of studies that will be in the covered in the TOEFL. Now let's talk a little bit about some preparation strategies, what you are supposed to do when you are going to prepare for the reading, okay? So the first thing I want to tell you, it's even highlighted here, is read, read, read. Okay, the more you read, the easier the TOEFL will be. Okay, read English text regularly. Okay, don't limit yourself to one or two subjects that interests you. This is very common. I have a student, I use a student as an example, who's a geologist, and she loves science, so she reads everything about science. And she doesn't like history, so she doesn't read about history. And what happens as a consequence? She scores better in texts related to science, and she scores worse in texts related to history. In the day of the exam, guys, you don't know what you will face, so you have to be prepared for everything. Okay, so explored a variety of topics. Read academic texts. Reading is very helpful for you to develop your English, but reading a novel, for example, reading a book is not gonna help you unless it is academic, okay? So I suggest you find articles or publications from university libraries to prepare for the TOEFL. Another thing is, when you encounter unfamiliar words, don't you worry, you have to understand it by the context. Don't Google it, don't check the translation or look in a dictionary right away. Try to understand by context. And you will understand when I talk about the types of questions. But we have one type of question that is related to vocabulary. So you have to be able to understand vocabulary in context. And this method of learning based on context is gonna help you to go to the exam more with more confidence, and you will not stop, because that's something that happens sometimes. The students stop in the middle when you are reading something and you don't recognize a vocabulary. So when you practice this understanding by context, this is not gonna happen, all right? And finally, you have to train uh, making general inferences and conclusions based on the text. My tip here is, when you are taking the TOEFL, try to be interested in what you're reading, okay? Even if it is not something that you are super interested in, try to understand the text so the questions are gonna be easier. So pretend you are a history student when you are reading a history text, or pretend you are a geologist when you're reading about geology. It makes it easier to approach the questions later. Here are some pages that you can follow that will help you improve your reading. I think this here is key, okay? So I love the BBC News app. You can see on the BBC that you will have different pages in the newspaper. So you have BBC Earth, BBC Science. So every day reading a piece of news is very helpful for you to develop this formal reading. I highly recommend NASA, National Geographic, and History Magazine, those first three there, because they bring this kind of vocabulary in the reading there. And here we have all of them. I'll just go over it real quick just so you see which ones you want to follow. And also, I always give this tip to my students: follow those pages on social media as well, because you will always have access to it. And when you are in social media, I don't know, procrastinating on your studies, when you see like, oh, a post of National Geographic, two things might happen. One, you might read about it, which is actually a great way of practicing. And the second, it will remind you that you shouldn't be in social media, but you should be studying for the TOEFL. Okay, so my tips here are BBC News. So my tips here are BBC News app, NASA, National Geographic, History Magazine, The New Yorker, especially for arts, Animal Planet for biology, Discovery Magazine, also for science, Foreign Affairs for political science, Project Syndicate, also for political science and history, The Guardian, it's another free newspaper, BBC Earth, BBC Science, and the New York Times. If you use this, I'm sure you will improve your reading. Read one piece of news or one piece from NASA, for example, every day, and you will do great in your reading, developing your reading. Now let's go deep on exam strategies. So take a deep breath and relax. Okay, so relaxing is hard, especially for the TOEFL because of time, but it's necessary. And I have a verb in English that will help you to relax. And this verb starts with S. Think for 2 seconds. What verb that starts with S that will help you relax? The verb is study. The more you study, the more relaxed you will be for the TOEFL. Okay, so following the course, doing all the activities, and learning in detail how to approach, especially the reading, will help you be relaxed during the exam. And that's very necessary. Okay, it is completely okay if you're not familiar with each single topic of the reading passage. Everything you need is in the text. Okay, and plus, very interesting here, the most challenging words will be highlighted or underlined, and you will have the explanation of the most challenging words in the text in the TOEFL. So don't worry about jargons. While it is important to be quick, you should not stress about the clock. This comes with practice, okay, guys? You have a clock here on top of the screen, like here, counting down, like 16 minutes and 32 seconds. It looks like a bomb that is about to explode. You have to get used to timing yourself when you are practicing for the TOEFL, okay? Focus on understanding what you're reading and what the questions are asking you. So that's why I said pretend you are a student in that field. When time, this is key. I will even use red here to highlight this. When the time of the reading ends, put this behind you. The TOEFL test, you will have in the TOEFL test, as you already know, it is divided into 4 parts. You are not doing one test, you are doing 4 tests, okay? When you finish the reading, forget about the reading and go to the listening. When you finish the listening, forget about the listening and go to the speaking. When you finish the speaking, forget about the speaking and go to the writing. When you finish the writing, the test is over, you can do whatever you want. But why do I say that? And this happened to me in my first TOEFL when I was 20 years old. I felt I didn't do so well in the reading, and then this affected the whole rest of my test because I was very nervous and I felt like, oh, I did very badly in the reading. And this affected directly my listening, which affected directly my speaking. So it's very important for you guys to compartmentalize each part of the test. Okay? Shift your mindset and prepare for the listening session that comes ahead of you. And remember that you can always compensate grades. So if you don't do very well in one part, you can compensate going very well in the next part.